northwest of Sheffield, Liverpool is another former great industrial city. But it was also, and mainly, a flourishing port. In the 19th century and up until the 1930s, Liverpool's income was superior to that of London. But from 1931 to 2001, the city lost over 400,000 inhabitants, half of its population. Today it's gradually becoming repopulated, but it is above all a popular tourist destination nowadays. It's the hometown of the Beatles, of course, and the Liverpool Maritime Mercantile City is a UNESCO-designated World Heritage Site. It's just turned 10:30, and Tristram Brady Jacobs is at his cutting board. Tristan is an urban artist with a particular interest in the remains left behind by the working classes when they upped and left. He's been living in Liverpool for 20 years.
England at that time was a very dark grey place. My friends in Newcastle upon Tyne just thought I'd upped and disappeared in a puff of smoke. All around me was evidence of abandonment and desolation. And to some extent, I loved it. It was a really fascinating time.
Undertaking his research and his artistic projects takes Tristan all over town.
So we're in the Baltic Triangle, which is one of the last sort of industrial spaces. On the right is the Herculaneum dock. So this has become something of one of those less benign interstitial space in cities where old factories have been flattened and car dealerships have sprung up.
On the seafront, the Albert Docks, vestiges of Liverpool's past grandeur, have been totally renovated.
The buildings were just used by junkies and pigeons. And with the European money and a lot of imagination and verve, the city has turned it into one of the world's great tourist attractions. It's for Beatles fans. Liverpool, and always has been, a city of front. You see it in the girls out on a Friday and a Saturday night. They are absolutely packed with makeup and just gaudy like butterflies. They're going to die after one night, but it's front.
Three kilometres from the centre, on Crosby Beach, iron men stand facing the sea.
When it arrived, its poetry is just immediate. It sits with the landscape, this flat beaches, these small, dark figures. But it's also about what's coming over the horizon, what's the potential in the future.
The Iron Men have been staring obstinately at the sea for the last 20 years, which only seems right. In the past, after all, the sea has so often been the country's salvation. It was through ruling the waves that Britain ruled the world, and just as its industries were on the wane, the country had the good fortune to find enormous gas and oil fields under its waters. Hidden treasure indeed, and the start of a new adventure. Since the 1970s, the exploitation of the offshore gas and oil fields in the North Sea has transformed the very landscape of these coastlines. In northeast Scotland, Aberdeen has become a town totally dependent on the riches flowing from the hydrocarbons in the North Sea. It's 11 o'clock at Aberdeen Airport. After being held up by poor weather conditions in the North Sea, this relief team, one of many, can finally take off for the Elgin Franklin rig and begin their 3-week shift at sea, 250 kilometres east of Aberdeen. And here's the nerve centre of the setup.
Okay, thank you.
This is where Elgin's workers supervise the whole production process, the firefighting system and emergency shutoff.
Please. These guys in the control room can control everything on the plant. Every valve that's got any function, these guys can control that on the plant itself. That's for on the Elgin PUQ, Elgin A, Elgin B, Franklin and West Franklin. Even though those last two are remote, they're still controlled from here. But perhaps the most important thing today they're doing is to optimise the wells.
Drilling began here in 2000, and it's a good illustration of the problems this industry faces in extracting gas and oil from pockets buried in rock at a depth of 6 kilometres. The United Kingdom's oil and gas production depends on a network of some 600 drilling rigs. The hydrocarbons flow through thousands of kilometres of undersea pipelines, and the network is connected to most countries in Europe. The United Kingdom can supply more or less half of its own consumption needs with its own oil and gas. But over the last 15 years, the production of British oil has halved. The fields are running dry, and the rigs have to be dismantled, a long and costly operation. Plus, there's the vast network of undersea pipelines to be maintained. Just like its European neighbours, the country is having to rethink its energy model. It has started to do this by focusing on the renewable energy sources with which nature has been so generous. First of these is wind, which blows abundantly over practically the whole kingdom. In the United Kingdom, wind power is now an unavoidable fact of life, accounting for 10% of its electricity production. With 1,452 wind turbines spread over 27 sites in 2015, the United Kingdom took second place to Germany as the world's leader for offshore wind power, with China coming third. This massive and for the most part successful conversion to wind power has encouraged more innovation in the world of energy production. The United Kingdom possesses another very promising source of energy: wave and tidal power. The archipelago is situated at the confluence of several seas: the North Sea, the Irish Sea and the Atlantic Ocean. Where their waters meet, the speed of the currents and height of the tides is magnified. Lisa Mackenzie works for EMEC, the European Marine Energy Centre, a public organisation conducting research into the future of tidal energy.
Okay.
To the north of Scotland, the Orkney Islands are a massive natural testing ground for this energy source. Over the last 2 decades, all the companies committed to its development have been coming here to test their hydraulic turbine prototypes.
We're arriving at the tidal test site now, and you can see Open Hydro's test platform in the water just down in front of us. The turbine is out of the water at the moment. The turbine itself is 6 metres in diameter, so it's quite a big piece of machinery. But when this company deploys on a more commercial scale, they've been developing 16 metre and even 20 metre diameter turbines.
At the southern tip of the archipelago, the strait separating the Orkneys from mainland Scotland has been nicknamed the Saudi Arabia of sea power. The speed of the currents here is spectacular, up to 5 metres per second, and the tides are some of the fastest in the world, at times reaching speeds of 30 kilometres per hour. The authorities have launched a very ambitious undertaking, the MGen project, the construction of the world's largest tidal energy plant. By 2021, about 60 turbines should provide electricity for 40,000 Scottish homes.
This is the strongest tidal strait in Europe, so there's a lot of power that could be harnessed from within the tides of the Pentland Firth. This is one of the most advanced sites being developed at the moment.
For its test site, EMEC chose Billia Crew Beach on the west coast. The technology being perfected at EMEC is all part of a commercial strategy.
The technologies that are testing here in Orkney are going to need a market, and they're going to want to sell their technologies not just in the UK or in Europe, but they're going to want to go to the Americas and to Asia to sell their technologies as well.
The sea is the United Kingdom's natural partner. Paradoxically, just as these ultra-modern tidal turbines are starting to supply electricity, the fishing sector is in a bad way, adversely affected over the last few decades by European regulations. 50 kilometres north of Aberdeen, Peterhead is by far the most active fishing port in the United Kingdom. It's 11:30 in the morning. At Peterhead Wholesale Fish Market, business is over for the day. It's been a great morning for Jimmy Buchan, who has sold all of his catch. He carefully sorted through beforehand, favouring as always the consumers of continental Europe, by far his best customers.
It's a very nice fish, nice and meaty, much sought after by our European cousins again, more than the Brits. It's funny, we're an island nation and we've got this wonderful seafood. I just don't think we fully appreciate. But I would think Spain definitely one of them, France another, Italy. But these are the big fish-eating nations. But there's quite a lot of squid in today, so though it's quite a big market, 500 boxes in this market is squid. And now it's quite a lucrative sector of the industry to be in. And one of the good things about that is it's quota-free. There is no quota on it. So
the fishing quotas imposed by the European Union have been a successful means of collectively managing the resources, but have caused an extensive restructuring of the sector. In Peterhead, 3/4 of the fishing fleet has disappeared over the last 25 years.
I'm now into my 40th year. We've learned from our lessons and hopefully we can lead to the future. But what we've got to do is find our own new fishermen.
In order to go on making a living from the sea, many have now given up their trawlers, nets and deep-sea outings. The business is changing, and Scottish fishermen are being replaced by salmon farmers. It's such a flourishing sector that it's altering the look of the Scottish outdoors. Most of the fish farms are located in the Orkneys, the Shetlands, and on the western and northern coasts of the Scottish mainland. This is Skourie. At Loch Duart Fish Farm, it's time for the daily trip to the pens to re-oxygenate the water for the salmon. The farm employs 100 people and stretches through the fjord for 15 nautical miles.
The challenge is, this is the best place to be farming fish, but it's also the most difficult because nature can be punishing. We've experienced hurricane winds, we've experienced invasions of jellyfish, which was potentially devastating.
The salmon hatch in the freshwater hatcheries, where they remain for the next 18 months. They're gradually accustomed to salt water before being transferred to sea pens, where they live until they're 3 years old.
This is 3 years. It's a lot to do, a lot to manage. Salmon is a carnivore, it eats a lot, and so you have to start with really good food for the fish. And we have a very high percentage of fish meal and fish oil in the pellets, and that gives it a robust, distinctive salmon taste.
Today, the salmon industry in Scotland is worth £1.5 billion, and it accounts for 94% of the salmon produced in the European Union.
Salmon farming is a new and exciting industry, and we're learning all the time. And the reason why you meet lots of young, intelligent, very scientifically aware people in the company is because they've come here because they want to be part of that journey. Our definition is we have to be able to do what we're doing now in 100 years' time and 200 years' time. And if you think about that, that is a good barometer.
It's 1 in the afternoon, lunchtime for the Loch Duart workers, who take a break right on the water.